Please welcome Paul and our panel.
Are we working? Yes, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in Lake Tahoe. No smoke. Last time I was here was last summer, and it was 105 degrees out on the patio. So much nicer weather this year around. So thank you very much for the introduction. We'll start off and let our panelists give a quick intro in terms of who they are, who they're with, and a little bit about what they do, and then we'll jump in.
I guess I'll kick things off then. My name is Droulez. I'm the CMO of Parachute. For those who don't know, Parachute is a premium home essentials brand. We kind of make bedding and bath products, towels, sheets, etc. that make your home more comfortable. Designed in Venice Beach, California, and made with the best manufacturers in the world.
My name is Fran Dunaway. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TomboyX, and we are a direct-to-consumer undergarment and loungewear and sleepwear company. We are in the gender-neutral space. We started 5 years ago with a much different vision, and 3 years ago pivoted into the undergarment space based on customer demand.
Alex McArthur, Chief Marketing Officer of Purple. We're a 2-year-old brand, also in the sleep category. It's been quite the journey. We didn't raise any money. We're approaching $300 million in revenue this year. It's been a really fast growth brand built off of social media, video views. And I'm really embarrassed to open my mouth right now because I'm addicted to hard candy at conferences, and I have like a really purple and red tongue right now. So I'm going to keep my mouth kind of closed.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristina Smith, Digital Marketing Director for Footwear, who are based in Portland, Oregon, and primarily known for hiking boots, casual streetwear, which I'm not doing a great job of representing now, but will later today, I promise, and work boots. And I've been with the company for a little over a year, focusing on all of our direct response digital acquisition through paid search, social, display, email, SEO. I think I'm forgetting something, but you guys get the gist.
Cool. So I'm just going to, my first question is pretty straightforward. What do you guys see as being, you can either take it as the biggest challenge or the biggest opportunities within that D2C model? And I know some of you, Keen certainly kind of plays D2C, but also has a strong retail presence. So much more of kind of a, we'll call it a traditional hybrid model. And I know Purple's starting to push into some other areas as well. So I'll throw it over to you guys and we'll go from there. So either challenges or opportunities that you guys are facing.
I think for us, this is going to be ironic because I think for other brands, it's going to be the biggest opportunity is online. I think for most D2C brands, the biggest opportunity is offline, whether it be through traditional marketing channels, but also through, having a retail footprint. We opened up 3 stores this year, and each one has had sales per square foot that's on par with like a Tiffany or an Apple. I think for customers, the tactile experience is still incredibly important to being able to make a purchase, and for 90% of home textile purchases still occur offline. So having that kind of physical, it's less about walking into a showroom with 100 beds or sheets floor to ceiling or towels. It's more about having somebody there who can tell the brand story, share the vision, allow you to kind of curate this vision of your home. And similarly, I think for offline marketing, it's a similar place. I think a lot of the storytelling mechanisms that are available in online kind of play into people's short attention spans. But if you're able to kind of get around that with direct mail, catalogs, TV, you kind of have a little bit more opportunity to say something about your brand. And so I think we've seen success with both.
We have a real unique opportunity in that we have a hungry audience and customer base that is very vocal and wants to be heard. We did a survey a couple of months ago and had sent it out to about 100,000 customers, and within 30 minutes had 500 responses. In 48 hours we had over 5,000. And so what do we do with that data, and how do we use that to improve the customer experience, the personalization piece of it, but also what channels are working, and then how do we parlay that into content, bringing in influencers. So we're at a unique place in our growth right now where we're scaling. We've just brought on new, more elevated marketing team as we put all of our resources into figuring out a lot of the digital channels and what's working best, and then also creating content and leveraging influencers so that we can continue to grow.
Along the lines of what Luke said, we're also seeing a very similar thing where everybody sleeps, right? Hopefully all of you do. So most everyone has a mattress. The truth is, 80 to 85% of people still default to going into a store to try a mattress. They want to feel it before they purchase it. A couple of years ago, nobody purchased online, and now 15, 20% of people do. So that's an opportunity for us to steal that market share that's adjusting. But we also want to have that tactile experience as well, where people can try products. So retail becomes a more important thing for us. So I think a lot of traditional brands are looking to get into direct-to-consumer, online, digital advertising, whereas the D2C brands typically are looking for the reverse. So it's kind of funny to watch. Yeah.
I think to your question about are there challenges or opportunities, my response is yes. There are both challenges and opportunities in the space that we operate in. The opportunity is simply that because we do have that wholesale retail model, we get a level of distribution that we otherwise could not afford ourselves. And if I put my brand marketing hat on for just a moment, I'm very thankful for that, because we get eyes on our brand on any given day that otherwise we simply would not have, just by assuming that people would see our own media, come to our own website. The challenges with that, however, are ensuring that there's a consistency in that brand messaging, that brand voice, that visual representation even. And that's something that requires a constant level of active, potentially aggressive monitoring as well. And certainly in the digital space, as I think about paid media, social, display, I actually frequently will refer to our wholesale partners as our competitors, because they certainly are. And we're all competing for that same share of voice potentially on our brand. So there's a blessing. It's a dual challenge that we face, and something that we work very hard to try to overcome every day. The very least to help people understand that KeenFootwear.com is the authoritative voice on the brand, and where you will find a higher level of selection than you would otherwise with any of our distribution partners. But hopefully at least that introductory phase will come through that initial walking into a store elsewhere and taking a look at our brand.
Thank you. Those are great responses. I'll kind of flip it around a little bit, just because I think kind of based off where the discussion was going. We all use data as marketers to drive acquisition. We'll use the data primarily in a digital area, but are you guys starting to use data that you gather out there in the real world to drive back to your e-commerce experience to help fuel your further acquisition, that second purchase, that third purchase? So whether that is whether that's working through wholesalers, whether that's your owned and operated stores, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the front lines really of the business are the eyes and the ears towards our customer. I think both retail stores and customer service. I think when you're trying to build a customer-first business, you need to have a platform for strategic people within marketing, customer service, and retail to have a voice. I think a lot of the changes that we've made to the product, to the experience, have originated in those realms, and I think using things like CSAT and NPS when interacting with customers is good, but also I think it was brought up in the past presentation, just speaking with your customers in person. We recently did a pretty comprehensive consumer insights survey where we went into people's homes, 4 couples in LA, 4 couples in New York City, and a lot of that informed kind of how we understand customers and how they feel about the most intimate spaces in their home and how comfortable they feel sharing it. And I think leveraging that, because in a lot of ways, I think a lot of digital marketing, digital surveys, everything digital kind of distills human beings down into metrics and KPIs. But at the end of the day, a lot of marketing is people-based. And so even speaking to 5 customers, whether they be in a store or offline, is going to give you just as much information and in a lot of ways kind of set you on the path towards success.
We have an interesting way of approaching. Our focus is so much about our customer, and so on a weekly meeting every Monday we start out with a meeting that is customer centric. All of our best products, actually I can't think of a product that was our idea, came from our customers. And so we rely on our customer service team to tell us exactly what we're hearing from the customer, the things that are bubbling up for the next 5 things to try. The beauty of a direct-to-consumer is that we can launch something via a launch pad, come out with just a few, pieces and a few hundred or a few thousand and see how they do, and then go back and reiterate from there. But we also have identified 3 distinct categories of customers, and so we're working on the personalization that is depending on what they were, how they came to us, what channel they came to us. We want them to have a unique experience to what their interests are. And so aligning those up with the different personas and implementing a program that works effectively around that is something that we're diving into right now.
I love the flow that we have going here because Luke has to go first every time. We get to sit here and think about our answers. It's great. I love it. Let's just keep going in order.
At the very end, too.
Yeah, you have the hardest part. There's been a lot of discussion about data already. I don't think I'm going to provide some super valuable insight there. It is funny that my favorite report to look at every morning is just the post-purchase survey. So what our customers say influence them to purchase. All these attributions, the plague of a marketer's life, right? It's difficult to track where we're getting our sales and which channels are working. But I love to see what the customer thinks influence them to purchase.
This is an interesting question for me to have to answer because this is actually an evolution we're undergoing in our very company right now. I think historically we have relied on that word of mouth feedback from 1 or 2 vocal customers, 1 or 2 vocal sales representatives. And while that is valuable information, we are beginning to find that that may not be the most accurate information. And so we are looking for true data points that we can utilize, whether that is potentially through our first-party, third-party marketplace relationships with companies like Amazon or Zappos, whether that's customer surveys, whether that's trying to take those 1 or 2 voices and come with more voices so that it actually does become a bit more statistically significant. And it's an interesting evolution because, as you can imagine, that one very vocal customer whose opinion you heard 3 years ago, that may still be the thing that you hang your hat on every day that dictates everything you do, every strategy that you set, every voice that you go to market with. So we're kind of in a bit of a learning and growing and painful phase right now at Keen Footwear, but it's in a really good way because we are coming from a place of wholesale retail in which it is not to hate on anyone out there who may be in this space as well, but it is a very relationship-driven, very qualitative space to that .com e-commerce driven brand in which data tells me when to go to the bathroom practically. And we're trying to get our colleagues to start to not completely shift their mind in that way, but start to appreciate that there is data available that can help them make their decisions just as much as that softer point of view as well.
Thank you. Since Alex volunteered for the next question.
Totally reversed on that.
Exactly. Talk to me a little bit in terms of how you see scaling the business. Not just, I would say, the marketing and the business going forward. So not necessarily anything proprietary, but if you want to think of, if there's 1 or 2 things we've got to get right in order to scale and grow looking 12 months, 24 months down the road, these are the biggest opportunities, these are the biggest challenges, or this is what we're focused on.
2 things that come to mind. One, the sleep space has been typically very boring. Purple is anything but boring. We've tried to be the opposite of how we look at the category and standing out and using a variety of different figureheads. One of the funniest things, when I look at marketers and go to marketing presentations, almost always, and I hope somebody doesn't do this, I'm sorry if you do, almost every single presentation somebody shows the fishbowl slide where, like people's attention spans are shrinking, but nobody does anything about it. The attention span is shrinking over and over, and the data verifies that. And so being safe doesn't work anymore. So finding segments and being loud in those segments rather than trying to find a piece of content that works for everyone, because nothing works for everyone. I think takes some guts to do, and that's something that we value and we try a lot of. Just recently I presented to our board, and I got shredded over a piece of content that we put out there because they didn't like it, right? And our board is 60, 70 plus. This piece did better than anything we've ever done. So once I showed them that, even though they didn't like it, we're doing more of that. Creativity, experimenting, having personality, being vulnerable, I think are valuable things. And then being where the customers are is something that's hard for the direct-to-consumer mattress players. And so looking at those partnerships, deciding whether we're going to do our own stores or whether we're going to have partnerships out there that get us in front of people and let them experience the technology for themselves.
Actually, can I add one
thing
to that?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
I think the biggest opportunity with scaling, to me, exists outside of marketing in and of itself. I think a lot of times the customer journey is only talked about in the, from the context of like, these are the emails that I receive and this is what happens when they receive them. But for us, the customer journey kind of doesn't end the moment I drop somebody off on the website from like a Facebook ad. I think increasingly what we're realizing is that the end-to-end customer journey, from the first time you see an ad, to the time you go on a site, to the time you reach out to customer service, to the time you get your order, a lot of that is going to frame what we traditionally look at as ROI or ROAS and somebody's propensity to buy again. If you don't nail the first person's customer experience, then there's not going to be an inbound marketing funnel. There's not going to be a reason to come back or for there to be word of mouth. And so increasingly, I think the role of the marketer is to think beyond simply the impressions, the clicks, the things that people are seeing, and also to look into what they're doing. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing now is making sure that if somebody comes to a store, if somebody comes online, that everybody else is aligned in terms of what messaging we should be saying, how should we be talking about the product, how we should be talking about the brand. And I think like our biggest success is being aligned across the entire business, so that it's not like all the work that I do doesn't get lost because a package doesn't arrive or gets stolen, or the product's the wrong size or the wrong color. Because so many things can go awry within that full customer journey that extends beyond like simple messages or touch points.
Okay. Yeah, I have to jump back in super fast because it's a live stream and I said something about 60 to 70 plus. I love that age group, just so you know.
They sleep.
Just want to make sure that my point came across, that it came from one viewpoint, right? One age group. I take it back.
I just wanted to add on to what Luke was saying in terms of integration of the entire company and how important that is. For us right now for scaling is making sure that our product people are talking to our merchandising team, to our marketing team, so that we're integrating and using that information and data in a way that is driving it, so that we aren't marketing driven, we aren't product driven, but we're integrating and working together toward the same goal.
Yeah, that segues perfectly into my next question, and we can just keep going from here. I think there was I think nothing. There was a time where somebody set out an org chart, said, here's your marketing organization, now go fill in the boxes. And I think we are all clearly at a place now where that gets flipped, right? Where somebody says, here's the consumer, here's our business model, here's our strategy. Okay, now go out and build that marketing organization. So talk to me a little bit, and you just touched on it in terms of how you guys are thinking about how you structure your marketing organization, how they go to work, and what they're working on. Because I will say, I think, I'm at a point where I think the strategy, the marketing strategy and activation and the execution, to some extent, that's the easy stuff. It's pulling everyone together across product, across marketing, across customer service, across sales, across wholesale, retail, and e-commerce. So to me, that organizational structure is critical to be able to delivering on everything we want to deliver on going forward.
And it's not just that organizational structure, it's the shared KPIs. And that seems like the most ridiculously simple thing to say, but that is, we actually, and I think I mentioned this during our conversations last week at Keen Footwear, we've actually just undergone a reorg about 4 months ago, where we officially created a DTC part of the organization. where we, I think, more formally recognize than ever before that there is this consumer, whether it's someone that is coming to Keen Footwear, or whether it's someone that's coming to Amazon and buying from us in a 1P, first party seller capability, that we coming into our stores where we have this direct to consumer capability. And for the first time, I think, ever in the history of the company, which mind you is only 15 years, so we're not talking 80, our brand marketing team and our e-commerce marketing team, our DTC marketing team, have shared KPIs. Right, we're all marching to those same goals of the number of people we're trying to get to the website, our conversion rate, revenue. Right, and so it sounds really simple, but it's something we hadn't gotten right. And so I think I 100% agree with everything you just said, and I think for us that linchpin of success beyond the org has been the shared KPIs.
Yeah, and same for us. Like, it's one marketing team. Yeah, there's like a distribution of responsibilities across brand, performance, CRM, but at the end of the day, if you look at your P&L statement, you spend a certain amount of money and you make a certain amount of money, and and it's at the same. And when I say you make a certain amount of money, that's across every sales channel. And so I think we're not competing against the stores to drive online sales. They're not competing against us. It's this holistic process. And I think the big thing is, having clear sense of what your role is and building a team based on roles. I think the biggest mistakes that we've made has been trying to build roles around people. And I think when you think about your company, it's like it's a series of roles that continue, kind of execute towards a common goal. And I think, as we've gotten clear in terms of what we need within that, like, who's going to be responsible as a channel owner within messaging for Facebook versus email versus direct mail versus TV, then it's easier to kind of come up with counterparts on the creative end and work on the site merchandising end. And I think that's been very valuable for us. But yeah, I completely agree. There's not, all the KPIs are shared. If you try to silo, like, it's okay to have different KPIs per objective, because naturally when you look at the audience versus placement versus the creative, there's going to be differences there, but I think making sure that people are aligned on what success means at the business level and then trickling that down.
First of all, I'm very jealous of your, I can't do the, I've always wanted to do that in a presentation. I can't. Yeah, we need a roundtable session to work on that. What stands out for me with our team is, initially when we launched, we got to a $75 million run rate with myself and a $12 an hour employee. And then we built a team after that. So we had, HR came to us. We already had an HR team, a large ops team, but we didn't have a large marketing team at the time. Like, hey, you have headcount. You can hire. Define your org. And I think that's how typical business thinks. Fill these spaces. I can't stand that mindset. Right. Like, for me, it's the same way I look at agencies. The CPGs, most of them are struggling right now because here's your hundreds of millions of dollars of budget for marketing, allocate it. It's all planned out, and if something's not working, it's really difficult to adjust from that. At Purple, we change our advertising budget almost daily, like things we're doing on TV to digital to, our spend adjusts on the daily. So I need a team that can work with that. So the mindset I have around hiring is when I find somebody that's an elite at a skill, that's when I hire. I'm not going to fill a position because we have a position. If I find somebody that's elite at Facebook marketing or elite at creating YouTube content, that's when we hire.
I think that's really great points everyone has made. And that ability to remain flexible and recognizing what the company needs, because that changes. It changes along the way. And if you're open to looking at it through the lens of where are weaknesses and fill to that, and not being about this, yes, about the skills, but how you hire according to what your needs are. And then I think it's also important to have a quarterback that is really understanding and able to see who is doing what and how to make those things happen, and absolutely evaluating on a daily, weekly, if not daily basis, what's working, what's not working, because I call it feeding the beast. I mean, it's direct-to-consumer is a beast that has to be fed daily, and you have to be evaluating what it's hungry for that day. And if you don't, you're going to lose sight of it, and you're going to fall into some tried and untrue ways of marketing, which is about this is your marketing spend, this is what you have to spend, report at the end of the month, and that doesn't work.
That's a great comments. Thank you from all four of you. Why do you think DTC has taken off? You know, if this was even 5 years ago, this would not be a subject. Probably even 3 years ago, it would not be a subject. So, you know, what is it that's been going on either in the consumer mindset, the marketplace, shifting, digital, et cetera, that has all of a sudden elevated DTC to the, you know, the top acronym in every VC's portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, jargon aside, I think that, for us, the biggest cultural tailwinds are about kind of identity. I think people increasingly, like, we kind of call our customers the quality seekers. These are people who, you know, they care about they're more of conscious consumers. They care about the products they buy, and they see kind of what they buy as an extension of who they are. So within that regard, I think it allows for a long tail of D2C brands. You're not necessarily shopping exclusively at retailers, but rather you're mixing in, you know, your consumption behavior at retailers with brands that you trust. So it's like Purple for the mattress, Parachute for the sheets, you know, TomboyX for, you know, like specific undergarments or women. You know, it's like there's a place in your closet or in your home for each of these brands. And I think the goal is not necessarily to capture all of the wallet share, because nobody wants to be just one thing, but rather to kind of like appeal to certain people for certain things. And I think that's why D2C has become powerful. And you know, really, it's the companies that were fighting like an Amazon or something that kind of paved the way for it, creating the infrastructure, the logistics, so that, you know, for me to set up, if I wanted to sell T-shirts tomorrow, I set up a store on Shopify, I get Google Analytics for free, QuickBooks is really cheap, you know, all of the software and tools and logistics, I can, you know, plug into a 3PL really quickly, and I could start selling T-shirts tomorrow. And I think all of that infrastructure and systems, if they weren't in place, you couldn't have a DTC brand the way that we do.
I also think that the more time we spend on devices and the more time that we think we're connected, we're actually not as connected. And so I think that there's been a real need for personalization, or for people to connect emotionally with brands. If you're just looking for a transaction, you can go to the big stores and quickly take care of the batteries that you need. But if you're buying something like something that's important to you, what you sleep and how the shoes that you want to go for a hike, those types of things are much more emotional, and I think that people are wanting that connection, and so I think that's a key thing.
I keep thinking of speed. All direct-to-consumer marketers take speed. No, just kidding. That didn't sink in at all. I'm sorry. That was my worst attempt today. So yeah, day's not over. So speed. You know, I look at the big brands that we compete against, and we typically try so many more things before they get to the one campaign that they're doing. So big companies can be quick too. It's just not very common. The ability to move quickly is, I think, what has made D2C so successful lately. Also, access to sourcing used to be so difficult. Like getting products, trying new products, you know, that felt unapproachable to most people. And now anybody here can go, you know, source a product, launch it on Kickstarter, see how it resonates. I think that's a big part of the story why so many D2C brands are launching. Customers are comfortable with trying something without it having brand recognition. I think the world is so much different than it used to be. I buy things on Kickstarter all the time. I want to have something that does something in a different way.
I think there's two things that come to mind for me. The first is Amazon, and I think, you know, if you think about the evolution of Amazon and the evolution of brands in the D2C space, you know, 7, 8 years ago, Sony TVs, for example, didn't have an e-commerce capability. You couldn't buy a Sony TV on Sony.com. You had to buy through other third-party merchandisers like an Amazon. And I think for a lot of brands, they very quickly realized how incredibly dependent they were on those third-party models and how much control of their brand they had lost as a result. And I think it scared a lot of brands. You know, for our own company, we've been around, our product's been around for 15 years. We've only had an e-commerce site for 5. We've only really taken it seriously for probably 3 of those years. So I think that's thing number 1. And I think for us personally at Keen Footwear, the second thing is that C part of DTC. It's the consumer. And I go back to what I said earlier. I think we believe that, not I think, we believe that, and I say probably we know that. We understand our consumer better than any of our distributors will. We want to provide them with a better level of service than any of our distributors will. And we want to build and maintain that relationship that goes beyond just the get you in the door, buy a pair of shoes, get you back out the door. We want to create fans for life. And that's something that we take very, very seriously. And we know that absent that DTC capability, we will not be able to do that. And we will not be around in another 10 years because everybody sells shoes. We just have to make sure that our fans understand how differentiated we are.
Thank you. I'll ask one last question, and I'll turn it back over. If you guys can give us kind of a one-sentence answer. When we all gather again 12 months from now, what are we going to be talking about? What are you going to be talking about?
Oh, dang. Your comment kind of inspired this, because I think about it a lot. I am a mumbler, so this word's not going to come out right. I'm going to try really hard. Vulnerability. Okay, that came out. I think brands have a hard time showing who they are. And in this model, or in this world where we're seeing more D2C brands pop up quickly, I think people don't have, and I can't remember whose slides showed this earlier, but people don't have they're not locked in on your brand the way you think they are. And for customers to love you, as you mentioned, love requires a lot of things. One of those is, and I'm getting too deep here, I'm going way too far, but it requires some vulnerability to show who you are for somebody to get that emotional connection. And I think brands typically don't take the risk to show that emotional potential to building an emotional connection. So vulnerability is something I think a lot about. And I mumbled it again, I'm sorry.
I think for me it'll be the omni-channel experience and what that is like and how we are executing on it.
I think for me it'd be the death of attribution as a means of, you know, truly measuring what's going on.
Lifetime value.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, but we have time for questions. Here you've got 3 of the fastest rising D2Cs out there. Open to your questions. Have at them. Yeah.
Brad Tutil with Sheeta Digital. Wow, that's really loud. So one of the things that you mentioned, like just this whole, you know, consumers now, you know, sort of the brands that they buy being, you know, a reflection of who they are, right? I'm interested to know, like, in this age where millennials are now, you know, trying to do more with less. Excuse me. What does your demographics look like across the board? Is it more millennials or? Excuse me.
I think what's interesting with us is that our core customer is actually more like 30 to 45. I think that what gets lost with all of the D2C brands is that by association, everybody thinks that they're built for millennials. And so they have kind of like cartoonish branding and everything is about how like fun and cool they are. But ironically, boomers and Gen X have all the disposable income. So to ignore such large swaths of the United States or pretty much anywhere is to do so at your own peril. Like all of our best customers aren't living in a warehouse in Brooklyn. No, they have multiple homes and they're truly titans of industry. So I think that's kind of been our biggest learning. You know, it's like you have to be able to have branding that can bridge those gaps. I don't think, you know, it's like be where your people are, but I think it's more thinking about it psychographically than in the terms of traditional demographic marketing. Yeah, and we are looking into, we have a different demographic based on channels, and it really can fluctuate. So our demographics are over 40% are between 24 and 44.
but we're speaking to them on different channels. And then we have that divided into kind of 3 different categories of what they're looking for in our brand. And so that's the piece, again, going back to the customization, but really wanting to build relationships with each of our customers so that they feel seen and heard. We're approaching branding with a different lens. We're not trying to tell people how cool they are. We actually, or we're not trying to tell them how to be cool. We think they're cool the way that they are. And so using that as kind of more of a reflection and to be that brand that sees you and that gets you.
I think there's one caveat to finding your target audience. A lot of people see, hey, 25 to 40, that's who's buying our product, and then all of a sudden they throw all their ad dollars to that demo. We've found the exact opposite, which is shocking for me because it's never worked out this way in all the projects I've done in my career. But at Purple, the older, sorry, not older, take it back. A little bit older than 25 to 25 age group is purchasing the mattress online. But the interesting thing is when we target the really young audience, we actually make more money because they share and their parents buy and they remember the brand. And so the sharing aspect is, I think, something that gets forgotten. So it's not always just targeting the audience that purchases.
I would simply echo what Luke just said.
Hi, Michelle Alfano. I work at Nordstrom. Christina, I think you said it really well when you were talking about how DTC, the most important part is the customer. And I think all of you have talked about the brand love that you are trying to build for your customer. But how are you guys balancing kind of going from your core customer, those folks that have come to you, and scaling out and taking the balance between those folks who love you for what you are and growing beyond that?
I think we're fortunate, maybe we're not yet at the size of Purple, so we have the luxury of still being able to kind of stay within our, continue targeting people that seem like they're part of our quote-unquote tribe. I think the key is not necessarily, like, if you make the underlying assumption that, once you reach a certain audience size, every additional dollar that you spend will have a diminishing return. I think it is more about, thinking about the mediums, the storytelling mediums and the ways in which you talk to people, and less so about like one channel or one quote-unquote scaling factor. As like an anecdote, our spend on Facebook is, as a percentage of the budget, has gone from 40% of our budget, well, from 60 to 40 to 20 this year. I think it's less about one thing, but rather many things. If you think about your own journey as a customer, you don't just see one piece of media and you're like, yep, that's it, now I'm buying it. A lot of things happen in the meantime. That's why, for me, like, attribution doesn't speak to what is actually going on. And in a world that is omnichannel, where you can see a bus ad and then the next day buy something via a search ad, and you're never going to fully capture that. So I think you almost have to embrace the uncertainty and embrace that human beings are irrational, they're random, but that's why we love them. And I think that's kind of the way to continue to scale.
I wanted to ask Fran and Luke, you both mentioned that your direct customer interactions have led towards product developments. I think it would be interesting to get a couple of examples of how your product changed or you iterated new products because of that, because I think it illustrates how consumers actually think about our products, use their products, and imagine our products in ways that marketers don't.
Well, we started the company because I wanted a cool shirt. I wanted a Robert Graham or Ben Sherman for women. Did a Kickstarter campaign and recognized pretty early on that the name Tomboy was resonating across. We were hearing from women and girls around the world that were excited to have a brand for them. And so that was our first aha moment. And then we, of course, we with a successful Kickstarter campaign, got the shirts into production and then started putting our logo on blanks, and it was just my wife and I who were the co-founded the company, and she was our customer service person, and said, I'm hearing a lot of people saying that we should make boxer briefs for women. And we thought, boxer briefs? Nobody does that for women? And we did some looking around, and looked on a very well-known company's website, and up came up, when you type in women's boxer briefs, a pair of Spanx came up. And we were pretty sure that that was not what our customer was looking for. And so that was an opportunity, and we introduced those in September of 2014. We decided to pre-sell them rather than run another Kickstarter campaign, and they sold out before they arrived. 6 months later, we tripled our revenue, and we thought, I think we're an underwear company. So it took a little time to rebrand and relaunch, but we continue to do that and iterate on what the customers are asking for. Our opportunity now is awareness, because it turns out we make really comfortable underwear for everybody.
That's, I think that's a little bit more inspiring than ours. I think. I mean,
Well, what do customers know about linen that you don't already know?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, the home space is pretty well defined. It's not as if people have not been sleeping or showering or living in apartments or homes for very long stretches of time. I think the issue has less been the places that you can buy bedding, but rather the shopping experience. It's generally predicated around marketing gimmicks like thread count, etc. So I think for us, like when the first thing that we released was sheets, I think the goal was to create an intimate connection with customers in a place of their home that they don't typically like to talk about or share with others. So we sold sheets, and then the first thing that people ask is, okay, I just bought a duvet cover, where do I buy the duvet? Or I just bought a pillowcase, where do I buy the pillow? So that was pretty straightforward. And then, you know, we like to sell neutral colors, so then naturally questions start to arise. What about patterns? What about textures? So like once duvets were launched, they became a best-selling color. Once we launched a dark gray, we realized that people really like grays. So we have 50 shades of gray now. I think it's things like that. There's been a couple moments where we had to think for our customers, kind of like the whole Henry Ford truism. Like robes have been like a runaway hit for the brand, and I never thought that apparel doesn't fit within home textiles, but in a lot of ways it's the same experience. When you surround yourself with comfortable things, you feel better, you live better, and that's the general premise of what we're trying to do.
Before we go to roundtables, I also have one final question of Alex, because I know Purple, you guys have been with us before, so I've heard this story before. I kind of wanted you to answer Luke's point about the mysteries of the customer journey, because you guys have you're very data-driven, you have a very firm hold on how many videos and touch points it takes in a YouTube journey to move people towards point of purchase. Can you tell us a little bit could you sort of respond to that, or maybe amplify that, of how much you can use these tools to understand and not understand the customer journey? Because you have a pretty tight hold on that in YouTube.
Then I've really misled you. No.
Okay. All right.
I'm playing with you. No, we do know a lot of things about the customer. We know how many touch points. I can't share that, unfortunately, but we know how many times they have to come to our site before we see a purchase, or how many ads that they have to see. And I will share a little bit of secret sauce with YouTube specifically. A lot of people look at us and think that we advertise heavily on YouTube, and we do, and I still think that's a huge opportunity for everyone. Most people think you have to go create unique videos or be a vlogger to be on YouTube. Treat it like television. Most views on YouTube are a penny to get somebody to watch a video. Think about how that would extrapolate with your TV budget. And you can actually get them to click on something. It's really funny to me that more dollars aren't adjusting there. I think it's one of the biggest opportunities in e-commerce. Anyway, back to the question. It's taken a long time for us, and it's actually getting more complicated. It was really simple in the beginning, because we built our business off of Facebook and YouTube. That's what built the whole thing. People thought we were this viral brand. In reality, now there's some virality to it, but in reality, we were paying for YouTube video views and Facebook video views. And we ended up getting all these shares. Then people believed it was viral, and then it kind of went viral. So, that perceived social acceptance really launched our brand. A random other data point to try to connect back to some of the last topic about using your data to make decisions. In the mattress world, I mentioned most people still want to buy in retail. But with direct-to-consumer, it's a heavy product. It's expensive. Most people don't want to spend $1,000 on something and get it to their house and not like it and feel like they're stuck. So one thing that we have to push is an early message that doesn't sound that exciting for a brand that tries to be fun and entertaining is the 100-day return policy. That's like gold in our space. Like when people understand that, oh, I can just return it and they'll take it back in full refund, that's a huge lever for us and a kind of a requirement for our business to succeed.
Well, we're gonna move this into a roundtable that's gonna start right now. But guys, that was really great stuff. Thank you very much for sharing. And thank you, Paul. We're gonna move to roundtables. Before we do, let me give it to John to make some activities announcements.
You got it. Okay.